Greetings, YouTube. We're going to do a bit more redeeming of creatures again today. So I'm taking a look at the Invisible Stalker. I'll be honest, I've never really utilized the Invisible Stalker often, either as a player character um, summoned being or as one used against uh, a group. I have no idea why. They're pretty cool. I always did enjoy the illustration in the original monster manual, which was just an empty white square. So let's take a look at this creature stat-wise, and then we'll talk about the description. So it's a challenge rating of 7. It is a neutral, medium, outsider, air elemental, extraplanar. Dark vision to dark vision to 60 feet. Decent AC, good fort, good reflex, weak will saving throw. It is naturally invisible, which is pretty darn cool. Now, the speed confuses me because if you look at a medium air elemental, now a medium air elemental has just a fly speed. It's at 100 and it's perfect. Whereas you look at the invisible stalker, it has both a ground speed of 30, which is very confusing to me, and a fly speed of 30 perfect, which also is very confusing to me. Why does it have a ground speed and why is it so slow? It's a perfect flight. Now, I think that having classifications of levels of flight, even having a fly skill, should be something maybe that we want to do away with. Um, I'll have to freely admit that PF2 and 5th edition streamlining some of the monster abilities or things like that, it had some merit to it, like having just magic attack or a non-magic attack as opposed to a +1 through +5 kind of thing. Makes it a little cleaner and simpler. I think those things have merit to them. Um, but why would you give this thing a ground speed and why would you give it a fly speed of only 30? It's supposed to be a tracker. Can only move as fast as a person. Now, okay, say you don't want to give it the same speed as a true air elemental. All right, that's cool. Then give it a flight speed of 60, get rid of its ground speed, and you're good to go. It's still faster than a human. It doesn't need a walking speed. It's an air elemental. So that was weird to me. It gets 2 slam attacks. I always thought that was kind of weird too, that they didn't get some kind of special ability. I don't know what special ability that could be, but it just seems so mundane. Just, you know what I mean? It's this really cool elemental creature, and it goes, I don't know, just seems weird. Um, 18 strength, 19 dex, con of 22. Those are all solid physical stats. Intelligence of 14, so 40% above a commoner. Wisdom of 15, 15% above a commoner, and a charisma of 11, so rounding error. Skills, let's see, acrobatics makes sense. Again, fly, I'm really questioning why a creature that's elemental has a fly skill at all, but I got a acceptable perception, sense motive, stealth, which is good. That makes sense. Now, it is a 14 intelligence, and it speaks Auran and Common. To my mind, it should speak one more language, because I'm thinking Auran's its natural tongue, and Common is one of the languages picked up, because it's one of the languages it's most often summoned by, is people who summon them speak Common. But I think it should have a third language. I would probably give it Draconic. Improved tracking makes perfect sense. Solitary, standard treasure. That's a little weird. So if you encounter one in the wild that's been hired, it's been summoned to track you for whatever purposes, and you confront it and you defeat it, uh, what treasure do you get? It's an elemental. It's visible. It's invisible. What's it carrying? That's an intriguing question, I guess. Maybe that one right there should be a video on and of itself. What kind of treasures do air elementals carry? Improved tracking and natural invisibility. Now, natural invisibility is a very powerful ability. So the description, I'm not going to go read the whole thing, is that these things are constantly plagued by the fact that mortals summon them. Now, they are neutral, and they have a 14 intelligence, which means they are capable of making moral and ethical decisions. They have a wisdom of 15, which means they can outthink and out reason your average person, your average commoner, okay, without a problem. And a person summoning them doesn't necessarily going to have an intelligence and wisdom as high as them, because the summoner could be a sorcerer. You can have a sorcerer with a 17, or 18 charisma, and they could have an 11 intelligence or a 12 wisdom. So they're not as bright or as wise as the thing they've summoned. Now, the creature in question is neutral. And one of the things that they're often hired to do, besides just tracking and spying, they're awesome at this particular ability, though it doesn't specify how noisy an invisible stalker is. That's intriguing. I never thought about that, because they've got a stealth skill, which makes sense. Even though they're invisible, they must be making noise. I've always imagined that an air elemental would make noise in and of itself, because it's moving air. It's not still air, it's moving air. So maybe when it's being stealthy, it just kind of sounds like a breeze. It's only when it's rapidly moving or it's in combat does it actually sound like a wind. That could probably be a decent explanation. Um, but lots of folks summon these things as assassins. Here is the blood of, the target I want killed, go kill them. These aren't just an animal. If you give the scent of blood to a trained war dog, and it's been trained to attack whatever it's been told to track, that's one thing. A war dog has an intelligence of 2. They're not sapient, they're sentient. There's a difference. And they're aware, but they aren't self-aware. An invisible stalker is self-aware, has a 14 intelligence. Again, 40% higher than your average commoner. That's going to cause a moral and ethical conundrum. They aren't just a gun. And if they're under a compulsion to become a gun, that's going to cause conflict. Now, they may find it annoying if they're told, I need you to guard me, while I'm adventuring. If a person words it well, so they can't really find a loophole. That's just a boring task for however long the summons lasts. They could be used as intel, and maybe they find this entertaining. Maybe they realize, I can't get out of this. I might as well make the best I can of it. Let's see if I can, make a game out of it. But what happens if they've been told to stalk somebody and gather information which is going to be used against that individual for the purposes of killing them or assassinating their reputation, or it's something more puerile and illicit and even it pushes the boundaries of good taste, and it goes into the realm of the profane. These things are neutral. They're not evil. Forcing a neutrally aligned creature to do evil is an evil act. So if a player character is summoning one of these things for the purposes of killing a target, even if that target is evil, it's still assassination. It's still murder. And forcing someone else to commit murder is doubly bad. It's not just murder. Now you're bringing someone else in and making them morally culpable for the crime that you want to commit. That's bad. So I don't know what I would do, and I'm just thinking about this. I'm doing this off the cuff. All of these are off the cuff. I'm reading the thing right there. I give it a quick skim, and I turn my camera on and I talk. I don't know what I would do in that instance, but these things have ethical and moral judgment. So What if they decide that the best ethical and moral judgment is to kill the summoner, or to subvert this the best way possible? Um, but it also got me thinking about elementals in general. People summon them all the time. They're sapient. Now, lots of folks say when you summon a creature, you're not summoning the actual creature, you're summoning an archetype. So if you're summoning a bear to, with nature's ally, you're not summoning an actual bear. You're not sucking a bear out of some terrain and then dumping it in front of you and then pushing it back if it's still alive. You're kind of summoning the archetype, the bear, capital B, kind of like the animal uh, archetypes that are frequently referred to in Australian Aborigine faiths. It's, or some indigenous peoples of the Americas, they say like coyote. They don't mean just a canine, they mean coyote. They're an individual, and you're kind of summoning an avatar of that creature, but not the creature itself. Though I have used a summoning spell to actually summon a player character party to a different world and force them into combat against their will because I was juvenile and evil at the time. But I would not necessarily make that judgment today, but that's what I did 30 years ago. Um, but just summoning an elemental is questionable. They have an intelligence of 4. Again, you're not discussing philosophy with these folks, but they're folks. They're people. They're just not bright people. But you're still forcing a bright person who has an ability to make judgments and make a judgment about right and wrong, often into just killing whoever you want killed. I mean, if you summon an elemental and say, like, defend me, that's one thing. If something doesn't attack it, it isn't going to do anything. Or if you're going to have it do a mundane task, there's no moral or ethical quandary with that, as so long as they're not being duped into something. But if you were to continually summon elementals and force them to do things like that, eventually you're going to attract the attention of the elemental lords, which is something you probably don't want to do. But that's just me. But the invisible stalkers, I think they should be involved in this. They should have the chance of breaking free if they're being forced to do something they don't want to do. And since they are neutrally aligned, they don't just want to murder people. They just want to murder people. They would be neutral evil or lawful evil. They're just guns for hire. They'll kill anyone or anything you want dead. That's an evil act. That is an assassin. And assassins are not neutral. They're not amoral. They are evil. They may want to couch it in terms of being, morally neutral about it, of being distant about it, of not involving themselves in the detail, but they're still making a judgment. They've still decided that taking another life is perfectly acceptable as a way to earn coin. And invisible stalkers aren't that. Okay, so let's talk about invisible stalkers. How we've used them, have we used them? And the fact that they should be involved in making moral and ethical decisions when someone says, go kill that dude.